Story 1. San Sebastian Encounter. Traveling solo can be thrilling until things go wrong. These horror stories show that having a travel buddy might be a safer option. In this video, we'll explore eerie tales of solo travelers who face spine-chilling experiences, making you reconsider solo adventures. Once upon a time, I embarked on an exciting backpacking trip to the beautiful town of San Sebastian in Spain. Eager to explore, I mingled with fellow travelers at my hostel, and together we discovered some charming bars around town. Late at night, I found myself alone, seated outside one of these bars, enjoying the fresh air. Out of nowhere, two local guys approached and started a friendly conversation. Initially, their company seemed harmless and I was enjoying our chat. However, the situation took a strange turn when they repeatedly insisted that I accompany them to a dark, secluded site. I tried to brush off their suggestions politely, maintaining a lighthearted demeanor, but their persistence was unsettling. Despite my limited knowledge of Basque and Spanish, my understanding of French and Latin helped me sense that their intentions were far from good. Snippets of their conversation hinted at a plan to lure me to the docks, possibly to harm me. Realizing the danger, I tactfully extricated myself from the situation and made my way back to the bar, where my hostel mates were still hanging out. The experience left me deeply unsettled, and I remained on edge until we safely returned to the hostel. The reassurance of being in familiar company eased my fears and made me feel secure again. Story 2. Forest Encounter in France. Throughout my life, I've ventured solo across the globe, often finding myself the only foreigner for miles around. As a solo woman traveler with a distinct complexion, blending into the crowd was always a complex challenge. I recall an afternoon when I was crossing through a forested stretch of the Bois de Boulogne in France. Two men were strolling on an elevated path. As they reached my level, they suddenly split up. One began wandering back while the other veered towards my direction through the trees. Noticing this, I immediately turned and paced back from my original path, ensuring not to alert them of any fear I might have had. It was indeed a wise decision, as I later came to know about a series of unfortunate events that had taken place in the Bois. This experience reinforced my belief in trusting my instincts and staying alert when traveling alone. Story 3. Turbulent Flight to Paris. Another terrifying moment in my travels occurred during a flight to Paris under adverse weather conditions. Darkness enveloped the early morning sky, and thick clouds masked the usually visible lights of the sprawling greenhouses below. The plane, a massive Air France Airbus, shook and creaked, dipping left and right due to severe turbulence. As the turbulence persisted, I couldn't help but reach for the hand of the stranger beside me, who was doing the same. The plane continued to rock violently, and it felt like an eternity before we finally saw the runway lights. We released our hands as relief washed over us when the plane safely landed. The interior lights revealed that nearly all passengers had reached out and held on to someone else, be it a friend, family member, or a total stranger like mine. After everything settled, my seatmate and I exchanged a glance of mutual understanding and relief before carrying on with our separate lives. That moment stays with me to this day, and I often find myself wishing him well. Story 4. New Year's Eve in Cape Town. Once, during a wild New Year's Eve party in Cape Town, South Africa, I found myself saved by a considerate taxi driver, a memory that remains dear to my heart. South Africa, despite its wonders, is known for its challenges, including severe poverty and a high crime rate. Full of youthful energy and enthusiasm, I joined a New Year's Eve beach extravaganza with some fellow travelers I met at my hostel. We decided to head to the party using an affordable communal mini-taxi. Upon arrival, the scene was chaotic. Young locals, energetic and rowdy, were having fun in their own unique way, shouting, throwing fruit, and marking people with black shoe polish. Before we knew it, we became targets of this wild celebration. Seeking refuge, we took cover in a nearby restaurant. As we enjoyed our meal, an egg splattered against the window next to me, making me uncomfortable and signaling it was time to leave. My newfound friends had other plans and decided to stay back, leaving me to venture out on my own. With many taxis out of service due to the drivers joining the party, I had no choice but to walk until I found a regular taxi. As we journeyed back to my hostel, I noticed the taxi meter spinning rapidly. My spirits hit rock bottom when I realized I didn't have enough money to cover the fare. I instructed the driver to pull over as soon as my cash was depleted, but to my surprise, he continued driving and brought me safely all the way back to the hostel. His act of kindness in ensuring my safety despite my inability to pay the full fare is something I hold dear to this day. Story 5. Point Reyes Kayak Adventure. I remember an adventurous weekend I had at Point Reyes, California. As night fell, I found myself paddling my kayak on an isolated strip of beach. I quickly arranged my camping gear, setting up my tent and creating a cozy campfire to keep myself warm. Sitting by the fire, admiring the countless stars in the sky, I suddenly heard a curious sound. I had been warned about the presence of elk in the area, especially during their mating season. With caution, I turned my head towards the sound. An ear-splitting scream escaped me as I saw 6 pairs of crimson eyes piercing through the thick darkness. Beaming my flashlight at the intruders, I realized they were a bunch of raccoons. Convinced of my safety, I wasn't overly worried. After all, I had been practicing Tai Chi and had watched plenty of Buffy episodes. However, my spontaneous moves didn't faze them. I resorted to a more primitive approach, picking up a stick and banging it against a rock in a mad manner. Surprisingly, it worked, but soon enough, they were back. With their return, it became clear that these were not the adorable, harmless creatures portrayed in Disney movies. A bright idea dawned on me. I rushed to the safety of my tent. As I tucked myself inside, I could hear them dragging something that sounded suspiciously like a dead body. Then came the eerie sounds, scratch, scratch, scratch. They had enveloped the tent and seemed poised to invade. During the ensuing panic, I must have lost consciousness from fear or drifted into sleep. Morning couldn't have come any sooner. As I stepped out of my tent, I was greeted by the sight of my backpack, which the raccoons had dragged around, treating it like a dead body. The cherry on top was that they had feasted on all my power bars, which probably accounted for their tireless energy. Story 6. Night in Santiago, Chile. Once upon a time, I was a young lady and decided to embark on a solo adventure in South America. My journey took me to Santiago, Chile, where I found myself stepping off a bus late at night. No sooner had my feet hit the ground than a man approached from the direction of the taxi stand, inquiring if I needed a ride. I nodded, and off we went towards his taxi, which was parked a considerable distance away, about 6 blocks or so. As we walked through the vast, unfamiliar city, a sense of unease started to creep in. Shaking off my worries, I reminded myself everything was fine. Before getting in, I made sure to scrutinize the taxi for its usual branding and then hopped into the front seat, keeping my bag close to me as was my custom when taking rides in this part of the world. I gave the driver the address of my hostel, and we started a light conversation in Spanish. After a pause, he turned towards me and calmly asked, "Are you scared?" His question startled me. Trying to play it cool, I chuckled and replied, "No, I'm good, just tired and it's late." He looked at me and noted, "Well, you seemed pretty scared back there when we were walking. You know, there are many wrong types around here. Sometimes they masquerade as taxis. You can never tell who is trustworthy. I've heard tales of women being kidnapped after getting into the wrong taxi. Are you traveling here by yourself?" All this while, we were still in the midst of the city, with darkness enveloping us and the hour late. The chilling realization that not a single soul knew my whereabouts hit me. I had planned to update my family once I reached the hostel. They were under the impression that I was still on the coast. Of course, I didn't share any of that with him and replied that I was always cautious and that my friends were actually expecting me at the hostel. As I spotted a stoplight up ahead, I started formulating a plan to exit the vehicle as soon as it slowed down. That was undoubtedly one of the most frightening moments of my life. Suddenly, I noticed from the corner of my eye that the driver was reaching under his seat. My mind immediately leaped to, gun, 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 he's going to pull out a gun. But what he actually pulled out was far from my expectations, a religious pamphlet. He then said, "But you know, there's always one thing we can trust, right? The Lord. Do you believe in God?" He spent the rest of the journey trying to persuade me towards religion. Although he turned out to be harmless, that unexpected religious taxi driver gave me a fright I wouldn't forget. Conclusion. These stories highlight the dangers and challenges of traveling solo, yet they also emphasize personal growth and resilience. Whether encountering potential threats or navigating through moments of sheer panic, each experience has taught valuable lessons and left an indelible mark. While solo travel can be risky, the adventures, memories, and stories we gather along the way are priceless. If you enjoyed these tales, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up.